So for the previous two ceremonies, um, I have basically two ceremonies that repeat, and they involve one, a giant bird that I thought was a thunderbird, but turns out to be condor, being a spirit animal that is my spirit protector entering my body. Um, that was, one of the big motifs that recurred in that ceremony, in those two ceremonies, and the other one involves a giant, like essentially castle in the sky made of just light and technology and information, with this giant center spire that just reaches indefinitely to the as high as possible. It just goes on forever, disproportionately. And I was told, one, the bird was a condor, but two, more importantly, that building was the house of God. It was where God resides, and that I would eventually go inside one in ceremony, and I would find illumination. And I knew from the previous two ceremonies that I just needed to love my enemies, but I knew to love my enemies just required me to say my prayer that I learned in tambo. So actually going into the ceremony, what I was doing anyways every day in tambo was bringing to consciousness everybody who was kind of in my life that I felt, wronged me or put me in some kind of negative state. I said the prayer, I pray that your suffering comes to an end. I pray that you find peace in your heart, and I pray that your spirit is protected. I pray that every day, basically for about 2 hours every day for 30 days in tambo. And then what I realized was after I said that prayer, for these people, including these newcomers who are just, people at the healing center who are spreading lies about me, bullying me, threatening me. I took all of that. I took that prayer and I brought it into ceremony with me. And I prayed it for an hour before ceremony started. Then I prayed it for an hour after I drank my cup of an ayahuasca. And then I prayed it during ceremony. I kept that prayer close to my heart. To love my enemies and bring me to unity, to always be able to hold my center, to hold unity at any time. So I'm saying this prayer throughout ceremony. And the ceremony is going kind of mild at first. At first, I just think it's like the batch might be bad. I see like a kind of star chart in the night, and it's black and green, like I mentioned before, how everything is, all my visions were just like in black and green, like an old computer monitor. Everybody gets their limpias of their individual blessings. Like it passes me, it goes to this guy right next to me. He's a worker there. And it was actually the worker who was accused or who was caught groping women that I was. When he goes up for his individual blessing, as my shaman is singing over him for his blessing, he's singing a while. He's actually using a couple songs. Most people get like one song that might last, 3 to 4 minutes as their individual song for the individual blessing. This guy gets maybe like 4 or 5 songs. And as he's singing, my visions were all in black and green, but all of a sudden it bursts into color. And what happens is the multiverse shows up, the like web of energy that kind of overlaps, and I start concentrating just instinctively. Initially, I had stopped at the end of May doing that because ayahuasca was like, you're done, you don't need to do this anymore. But I started concentrating, and the thing just starts collapsing on itself back to a single coherent universe. After I collapse this multiverse into a single coherent universe, I find myself teleporting into this worker's body. This worker who was supposedly, groping these women. And inside his body, I am inside his lungs. And inside his lungs, I see like a discolored mass. I was just like fucking tripping my nuts off. I was like, I am inside this man's body, this person, and I saw what was making him sick. There was a sickness in his lungs that was making him grope these women. Whether it was psychic, energetic, or it was actually a physical sickness, I don't know the details, but I just know there was a sickness in his lung that I was observing. I didn't do anything at the time because I was intuitively, I didn't feel like I was supposed to do anything. But some of this goes on for a while, and I leave this guy's body. And as I leave, I see those ribbons of light I was mentioning, those 4 colored ribbons. And this time it's in full color again, like the red, orange, yellow, green. And they're just stacked, and they're stacked. You know, after I see these ribbons of light, Ayahuasca starts talking to me, or actually Ayahuasca shows up and I talk to it. I talk to her and I say, what the hell's going on? And she says to me, I was just waiting to see how you would handle disappointment. She wanted to see if at the end of all of this, like, I could just be fine with just these kind of black and green kind of ceremonies that are kind of bizarre that happen at the end. I wasn't seeing, you know, the multiverse collapse and whatnot. And now she's showing me, like, and, you know, there's a lack of color, which was weird. She's showing me full color, you know, full on multiverses to collapse. I'm going inside a lung. She just wanted to see if I could deal with, like, if I had just these kind of other ceremonies, if I can be fine after I had this other experience. She was like testing me. And I was like, well, I think you should know that I was fine. You know, you knew I would be fine. You knew I never needed visions in the first place after my prayer in Tambo. She goes, I know. And I said, stop fucking testing me. Stop messing with me. And she kind of laughs, and I go, let's go into the house of God right now. And she says, okay. Castle fucking shows up again. And I'm approaching it. And I get, like, right up to it. Like, I can see, like, I'm basically at maybe, like, 30 feet away from it. As I'm approaching it, ready to go inside whatever the fucking front entrance would be, which, ironically, I couldn't find any front door. I just teleport into it. And I know we're on the inside, and I go, no, I want to walk right up to a door, open the door, step inside, walk inside. I don't want this teleportation shit. I want to do the full thing. She goes, no, you don't dictate how I get you inside of the house of God. I'm going to get you in there how I want to get you in there. I was like, okay, whatever. When I'm inside, you know, the shaman said I was going to find illumination. And when I was inside, what ends up happening is it is like just stark and cold and dark. I feel like I am in an old English castle. I feel like I'm in an episode of Game of Thrones or some shit like that. And inside, I see nothing. It's just cold and dark. But dead center in the house of God is a throne, a chair made of snakes, and the snakes are like glowing, like with light. They're just winding and wriggling. The whole chair's made out of glowing light, glowing snakes, or snakes that look like glowing light. I just kind of stared across. I'm like, what the fuck? And Ayahuasca says, go and sit on the chair. Go sit on the throne. I go, I don't know about this. She goes, no, go sit on the throne. I said, God's been waiting for you to sit on the throne. He made this throne for you to sit on. I go, really? And God, inside the house of God, then says to me, yes, I made the chair for you to sit on. Go sit on the throne in the house of God. And I say, you know what? I'm going to talk to Maestro about this. I'm going to talk to my shaman about this, and then we'll come back. We'll circle back here. So, I'm not sure about sitting on the throne in the house of God. I exit the house of God, and as I exit the house of God, I'm just kind of sitting in the darkness of outer space or wherever I am, and I'm in the Maloka. In the corner near the roof, near the ceiling, in the beams, is this fucking brown serpent demon dragon thing. And it's looking at me malevolently, and it starts kind of flying towards me as if it was going to try to, fuck with me, curse me, whatever. And at first, I feel this little wave of kind of fight or flight take over, and I was like, what the shit? And instinctively, as it was coming, I just start singing to it. And as I was singing to it, I transformed it from this brown, malevolent thing into this thing made of like this blue and green light. It transformed from like a demon type entity spirit thing into something that would be akin to like a butterfly. And then just started, the energy of it just transformed into something totally different. Like the energy inside the Maloka shifted during that ceremony. And as the energy in the Maloka shifted, I found myself teleported again into two more sets of lungs. I teleported into one person's set of lungs, and then after that, I teleported into another person's set of lungs. I don't know why it made me go into 3 different sets of lungs in one night, but it just did. The third time, I saw this like kind of dark mass in the center. It was a different kind of mass than in the mass of the first person I saw, who I said was groping women. And I sang to it, and when I sang to it, it changed in color, and the kind of dark mass of it kind of went away. It went from a dark mass to bright and pink, like a healthy lung. It like looked like it matched the rest of the lung tissue. I was like, I just sang to somebody's lungs. I was inside somebody's lungs, and I sang to it, and I changed it. I sang to a demon and turned it into a butterfly. I would go, what the fuck? And at the end of the ceremony was over, I asked, my girlfriend was sitting next to me, and I was like, how'd your ceremony go? And hers was kind of like mild, And I just told her what happened. I go, I just went into, this guy's lungs, the worker, who's groping women, who ironically groped her too. Said, I saw inside his body. Went inside his body, and I went inside his lungs. I saw a mass inside there. I told her I went inside the house of God, and I saw a throne made of snakes. And I told her I sang to a demon, and I turned it into a butterfly. And I said I finally went into a set of lungs where I sang to it, and I corrected it. She was like, what the fuck? When the ceremony's over, the person whose lungs I sang to goes outside of the Maloka, and he starts coughing, and he coughs something up. And I was like, that's a little odd. There was nothing prior to the ceremony that indicated that he had anything wrong with his lungs. And the other thing was, in the morning, that worker who was groping women comes by, because he's a worker, so he was helping clean the Maloka. And I asked him, I go, how was your ceremony last night? And he goes, good. And he goes, I had a problem. And he points to his lungs. And nothing, during the ceremony really suggested, from if you just talked to him in general, that he had a lung problem. And then he points to his lungs after I talked to him. I was like, this is nuts. It called me to do something very specific in the tradition, to become a healer within this tradition. There's a quote, I think it's Seneca, that says, the fates lead him who is willing, he who is unwilling they drag. And that's what I thought, the entire time. I was reluctant to be a shamanic healer. I just wanted to do the diet to see the knowledge. And it kept putting things in my path whether I knew it or not, to become a healer. I mean, that prayer is the first step in a path to become a healer of others. And these challenges that happened with the bullying and everything was another challenge I had to face. All of that was things put in place for the moment when I would get to the house of God. And if I was pure of heart, and if I was worthy, I could get into the house of God. When I got into the house of God, it was just a total fucking flip of expectations. And instead, I find a fucking throne made of snakes. And the next day, I told my shaman, I go, yeah, I got into the house of God, but all I found was a chair made out of snakes, a throne made of snakes. He goes, just sit on it. It's ayahuasca. And I go, oh, I realized as much. I figured that the snakes represented ayahuasca in the chairs. So I realized then, okay, I'm going to prepare myself. I'm going to, next ceremony, I'm going to go into the house of God. I'm going to look at this throne made of snakes. That's it.